So today, gonna basically walk through or chat through and get people's opinions on a report that we published a little earlier this year. So obviously, people teams, HR teams. In my job working at Huggg, I talk a lot about gifting and recognition, and we often hear the same thing, like people feel in their gut that gifting and recognition works really well, but a lot of people just it's a tricky one to prove. So yeah, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that basically, and just chat through a few of the key stats that we found in this report. And joining me today, I've got a great bunch of people. So we'll do a little round of introductions. I'll introduce myself first. So I'm Louise. I'm commercial director at Huggg. So been at Huggg 7 years now, helping clients of all shapes and sizes with sort of employee gifting and recognition moments. I have a lot of experience working with small startups through to much bigger companies like WPP and Monzo and businesses like that with their gifting and recognition schemes. Louise, I'll let you introduce yourself next.
Hi everyone, I'm Louise. I work at Stowe Family Law as head of culture, part of our people team, and we've been utilising Huggg as a gifting platform, part of our recognition and reward strategy for about 2 years, I think now. So yeah, interested to chat about kind of the data that's been found and how we utilise in Huggg at Stowe.
Nice. And Adam?
Hey folks, Adam here from OpenOrg. We are small 2-person team supporting a lot of startup, scale-up people teams to thrive in many different ways. 14 years or so before OpenOrg as a startup founder and co-founder as well. So have spent a lot of time as a founder thinking about gifting and recognition for my own teams in the startup space, and now spend a lot of time understanding how other people teams out there in that startup scale-up space are doing a whole host of things, including gifting and recognition.
Nice, thanks, Adam. And Mac.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mac. I'm the founder of K Consulting. We're a consulting organization supporting small and medium-sized enterprises and businesses to maximize their return on people. Got this view that kind of organizations grow when people grow when organizations grow, and we think recognition is an integral part of that. I'm not a Huggg employee or customer or provider, but I was deeply fascinated by the findings of the report, many of which resonated with my own lived experiences, and I'm happy to be here and spend this time with you.
Amazing, thanks all. So yeah, we'll run through some of the key stats now, and then we can just get into the discussion really. So a bit about the report. So we ran it towards the start of this year. There are 85 verified HR or people professionals. So obviously we had a few respondents that we couldn't verify or didn't work in HR, so those were stripped out of the data across over 80 different UK organisations, and the size of the businesses ranged from, as I say, small startups to enterprise big businesses. So onto the insights. Basically, the one that really stood out for me was that 2/3 of respondents. Sorry, I've now got a dog barking outside, so I'm going to close my window. There's always something, isn't there? So 2/3 of respondents believe that gifting helps with recognition. They feel in their gut that gifting has a positive impact on culture and people wanting to stick around, basically. But barely anyone can actually prove it, or actually they're actually tracking it. So yeah, we kind of really feel as HR teams people teams that gifting and recognition works, but we're either not tracking it or we're finding it difficult to actually prove that it's the case. Two common roadblocks that came up a lot in the report. 59% of people surveyed said the top challenge was budget. So struggling to get budget signed off, struggling to build the business case, get the finance teams on board, which I guess kind of goes hand in hand with the being able to prove that it works piece. And manager participation was also one that came up regularly. And that was particularly, it was more pertinent in larger organizations. So the bigger organizations really worry about managers actually using recognition schemes, gifting schemes, all of that sort of stuff. And enterprise businesses were also more likely to have no ROI tracking in place on gifting schemes, which was quite an interesting one. The mid-market felt the strongest retention impact from gifting programs, and smaller organizations really worry about giving people gifts that they actually want. So I guess that goes down to the fact that they're smaller businesses, everyone sort of knows each other, they're more likely to know everyone in the business, so they worry about actually getting the right gift, getting the right thing for people. And then final one, of all the gift types that are available, so experiences, gifts with choice, gift cards and vouchers, cash scored the lowest on perceived retention impact. So obviously, I mean, it goes without saying that having market rate fair salaries is the fundamental, but then when it comes to recognition, when it comes to gifting, it scored the lowest on the perceived impact on things like retention. So yeah, worth considering. But yeah, I mean, there were loads more stats in that report, so we'll share it after for anyone that's not seen it. But those were kind of the key things that stuck out for us. So I guess it would be good to get the panel's take on some of those.
Yeah, maybe we've lost Lewis along the route, and I'll try and help whilst he regains his connection and kind of offer some of the headlines that I saw in that, which is I think that oh, Lewis, you're back. I thought I'd do a good job of keeping the airtime going, and
I'm sure you were. I stopped sharing my screen and my computer decided to close.
Of course. Of course. I was just saying that there were a couple of points in the report around kind of where experience that I have matches the kind of aggregate picture in the report.
Yeah.
Many of the call outs just feel like a like-for-like match to me. I think, for example, the focus on cash is something that in lots of organizations people spend a lot of time thinking about, because people believe that cash is going to be the answer to everything, and people kind of start there, and then the experience is it's very quickly forgotten, because especially in 2026 it's really hard, it's really easy to get rid of cash as a consumer. It's really easy for you to empty your bank account day in, day out, and that moment kind of passes very, very quickly. So it's so tempting, I think, for certainly some of our clients to think cash is the answer, and then quickly realize that it's not. The other thing that I read in the report that kind of really resonated with me was around the linking of, or the high dominance of linking gifting to things that are predictable, like birthdays or seasonal milestones. And again, as human beings, that all feels nice. But most organizations want to get goodwill from their employees through gifting, but they also want to influence behavior. They want to repeat things that are successful and valuable to the organization. And let's be honest, you know, we can all guarantee we're going to have a birthday again next year, whether you reward me for it or not. Let's hope that we can guarantee that anyway. I think it was like very resonating for me that your report focused on just how many people tie their gifting to these things, value in that, but then there is so much more that can kind of come after that. And I also just loved the point that is highlighted in your report around kind of measurement and the paradox that goes on here, in the, like, I think basically everybody believes the gifting impacts retention. Like, there's a belief on it, but when you flip that into how can you prove it, I think your report says, like, well, no one actually has the evidence from the kind of respondents. And I think that that is something that I experience with our clients all the time, where sometimes you have to do what you know will be right, not just what you're able to get a KPI telling you is right. So yeah, lots of points that kind of match the aggregate picture for me. I find it a very fascinating report. Nice.
And you were saying like rewarding or recognizing behavior, I think was what sort of things do you see people linking it to? Is it performance or KPI metrics? Is it living or demonstrating company values, or is it a bit of a mix? Does it vary from organization to organization?
It definitely varies, and I think it should, right? I mean, lots of the work that we do is really trying to understand what are the commercial drivers in the business, what really matters, and how are you going to encourage the things that are going to contribute to that. So, you know, whether that is about the organization really focuses on their customer more than anything else, and they want to recognize people that are heroes for the customer in the way that they operate. And not only, you know, you sold this deal, you did that, you achieved that, but like the customer has given us feedback that the way that you approached understanding their needs was like super. That kind of stuff comes along. Or imagine things like safety performance in an organization, where you might want to reward people for kind of audit scores and KPIs, but if you really want to shift behavior, you probably want to recognize people for completing safety observations that are not really about accidents and injuries, but are about preventing it. So how are you backing up the cultural undertone that you want through kind of recognition schemes? That's where I think this comes from in a behavioral sense. That's what I mean.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that makes sense. Louise, how does that like link with what you do over at Stowe?
Yeah, I mean, what Mac's saying aligns quite nicely to what I would say we do at Stowe. I think we certainly like to recognise those key milestones for people. So big birthdays, you know, kind of those big 4-0s and things like that. But weddings, babies being born, promotions, and, you know, key length of service. But I think any gifting, you do need to be part of a whole package of what you're doing to recognise and reward and kind of engage your people. So I think having those in the moment things for the things that matter, I think our values are really important at Stowe, and we certainly talk a lot about not just the what but the how, you know, in terms of recognizing those behaviors, and also, you know, recognizing people's and supporting people's well-being. So I think, you know, it's, you've had a tough week, go and grab a coffee and a cake on me, or, you know, I mean, or something more, but, you know, we're able to just do those things. And I think in a hybrid working environment, especially, a manager being able to do something like that when they're maybe not in the room with the person or in the office with the person, just send that little quick in the moment, thanks for that, that was great, or, you know, well done on that. Those kinds of things are just really great as part of a wider package of kind of reward and recognition.
Oh, you on mute, Lewis?
Thank you. You mentioned so many different, trying to drown that dog out.
We can't hear it. I can't hear it anyway, if that helps.
Good. That's good to know. You mentioned so many things there, like life events, milestones at work, as well as managers being able to recognize, but also just like pick someone up if they're having like a bit of a bad day and stuff like that. But how do you go about figuring out what you as a HR or people team are responsible for, and what managers are responsible for?
So it's been quite a new. We started working with Huggg to help the people team. You know, we saw it and thought, great, this is going to provide better reporting. We were quite a small but a growing firm, so everything was a bit paper based, a bit kind of ad hoc, etc. So that was one of the main reasons. But what we have done over the last kind of 18 months is given managers a budget, and you know, I don't know that we've got it completely right, but it's working pretty well at the moment. So kind of HR are managing those life event moments that we like to call them, so promotions, big birthdays, somebody gets married, somebody has a baby, bereavements, you know, things like that. And then we give each manager a kind of small part every quarter for them to do what works for them in their team. So that could be a small incentive in the scheme. You know, we've recently run one like Max, it was quite resonant. Max talked about incentivizing, and actually we'd not really used it for that before, and it was quite a low value. You know, we were like, get a great client review and, you know, we'll send you a 10 back. But it really worked. You know, people love getting their little thank yous and recognition quite quickly rather than wait until the end of the year for their cash bonus. Or, I mean, I'm not saying those aren't important, but again, it's part of that whole kind of sphere of how we reward and recognize our people. I think those little in the moment things can really make a difference.
Yeah, and you said that you don't know whether you quite got it right with the manager budget.
Yeah.
Do you have that same worry of like managers not participating, or how?
Yeah, I mean, actually our managers have all embraced it. I'm constantly getting them asking for top ups. I've spent all my money, and you know, so they're loving it. But I think there is still we're probably not, back to the data and reporting piece, we're probably not tracking it as closely as we'd like and linking it to other data that we've got. You know, we do regular engagement surveys, and obviously we've got some retention data and things like that. And I think it would be really valuable for us to link those things together a bit more. You know, we see comments for sure in our engagement survey of employees going, I love Huggg, love getting a little recognition, I love getting my manager, you know, saying thank you, etc. So we got that kind of ad hoc data, but I think we could really do a better job of pulling that data together, and also seeing if we can see the managers that are utilizing their Huggg budgets really well. Are their teams better engaged? Are they staying with the business? Are they building their careers with us? And those kind of things. There's certainly a wealth of data out there that needs pulling together, I would say.
Nice. Yeah, it can be tricky. It can be a tricky one.
Yeah.
Nice. How about you, Adam? Like, what are you? How did it? Were there any sort of key insights there that link to what you see from the organisations that you work with?
Yeah, sparked a few ideas in my mind, and Mac, Louise, you've touched on a couple of these, but share some thoughts from my side. So the cash thing's really interesting, but I think also like it makes sense when you think about it. I think cash feels like quite a lazy option. Unless it's something meaningful, unless you're going to send someone like £2,000 and they can go on a massive holiday, or, you know, cash, you know, 20, 30, 40 pounds, like that feels like a lazy option, I think, to a lot of people. And gifts are a way more meaningful way to do that, I think. And I see that that challenge, I suppose, on the startups sort of level as well, which is the other thing that jumped out, was startups and smaller companies, I think, obsess a lot more about getting the gift right, which is why I guess micro stage, you might have a founder who's actually so connected to the entire team, they know everyone, and I think up to about 100 employees, I think that's probably could be argued that should be the case. You've got this, like, is it the Dunbar effect or something like that? There's like this sort of theory that after about 100 people, you start to really struggle to actually know those individuals. But up to that point, it's doable. And my last company, we hit about 85, and I still feel like I would have known everyone in that team, what they liked, what they wanted, like the sort of gift they might have liked to receive. And that should be doable. But that means you don't necessarily need such a sort of a broad brush recognition system, as it were. It leans more into ad hoc, personal, in the moment type stuff. And a lot of gifting approaches don't necessarily give people the options or choices that they need to go and do that. So that I see coming out a lot. And then the final one, which resonates, is the manager piece. I think there's two things here. One is, I think companies not giving managers the structure or the guardrails or the systems to go and do that. Louise, you've talked really well about how you've done that to give managers something to work with, and a lot of companies don't do that. They wait for managers just to come to them and say, I'd like to give something to Joe Blogs, etc. in my team. I think the other challenge though is companies frankly just promoting the wrong people into manager roles. You see too many companies promoting the highest performers as ICs into a manager role rather than the people who've got the highest EQ. And it's those people with the sort of emotional intelligence and connection who I think do this job really well. They don't have to work too hard at thinking about when they might just surprise someone with a coffee or spot that someone's having a tough time. So I think getting this right isn't just about putting the guardrails and the systems in front of the managers. If the managers themselves aren't the right managers, and 90% of them probably aren't, it won't work. So I think that companies have got something to do on that front.
Yeah, definitely. And by the way, I think I forgot to mention, if anyone's got any questions it's a bit hidden on Google Meet. The FAQs is in the little dots in the bottom right, and then if you scroll down you'll see the Q&A section. So if any questions pop up, feel free to drop them in. On that point, Adam, I guess, have you experienced it or seen it where some managers, a lot of the conversations I have, some managers actually just take it on themselves and do things out of their own pocket, and then other managers will kind of think, well, why should I have to pay for things if I want to buy someone a coffee or take someone for lunch? It doesn't feel like it should come out of their pocket. Have you had experience with that, where maybe there's inconsistency because some are quite happy to dip into their own pocket and others expect the company to pay for it?
Yeah, and again, it's down to the individual, and I'm not saying it should be like this, but I think the managers that do this really well, they might turn up to the office with coffees for their team without having even asked whether anyone wants one. They put their hand in their own pocket. They don't bother trying to expense it or getting the money. They just do it because they care deeply about their team. They want to do it, and they're not expecting anything back. I think those things are the things that really make people it's the whole surprise and delight thing. I think that goes way further than having to set too many systems in place as well at the same time. But at the same time, I do think there's something to be said that companies should not be making their employees or their managers put their hand in their pocket too often for stuff. So if you've got a good way of being able to expense something, then amazing. But it takes away a little bit as well from that sort of genuine nature of it. If you can expense too much, it's just is it a genuine gesture? Is it a genuine moment of appreciation and recognition, or is it I'll just do this because I can do it, So there's a fine balance there as well.
Yeah, definitely. One of the key things that was in the report that stood out for me as well was the fact that people weren't tracking the ROI, or they couldn't prove that it was working. Mac, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think we even need to? Do you think that's necessary? Do you think we need to be tracking ROI, or?
It depends on the organization, right, and the scale and the size and the driver. I know one of the questions that you always have is that that you should be doing this. In a big organization, you go and you talk to the CFO and you ask them, I'd like to invest this money in this because I know it's the right thing to do. And the CFO will say, okay, what's the ROI on that? And you can have a philosophical debate with yourself and anybody you want to know about whether you believe that you should or you shouldn't have ROI. But if your CFO is going to need an argument in order to release the funds for that investment, you're going to have to play that game. You're going to have to identify, what do you believe is the natural reaction to this? You're going to have to go through that process. That's probably the bigger organization, and you probably can find with help things that are likely to lead to improvements that have an ROI. But within the kind of work that we do, which are mid and smaller size organizations, I see two kind of flavors of that. The organizations that truly care about their people really want to create an environment where we can have a team of winners, people who can do their best work, where they feel included, and they want to have people meaningfully contribute to the organization. They are doing this because it's the right thing to do. And in return, people are delivering a great outcome in work. The small and medium-sized organizations that want to say, well, if I give you a £10 Starbucks voucher, what are you giving for me? Probably are not the organizations where those conditions exist universally that enable somebody to be successful. So I believe in ROI. I believe that everything we do should have an impact. But if you've got 20 people in your workforce, you should be thinking about what is the culture and the ethos of working here, where recognition plays a part. But it isn't something that you are, you know, I'm going to give you £1 and I want £1.15 back as a result of it. That's how I see this. And I see some nodding and I saw a thumb emoji. So I'm going to play to the audience and say that it's going well.
Yeah, definitely. The example I always use is like, if I ask my completely different outside of work, if I asked my friend to help me move house and said, I'll give you a tenner for helping me, they'd tell me where to go. Whereas if I asked them to move house and then take them to the pub after and buy them 2 or 3 pints, it's that it shows that I appreciate them, and then it's more likely that the favor will be returned in the
But I
future.
also imagine, Lewis, that if you had a friend and you said to them, is there any chance you can come and give me a hand?
Yeah.
And they said to you, I will, but only if you buy me 2 pints, and I want this particular
Yes.
brand, and I want it to be this temperature. That is probably the person that you do not want touching your personal belongings. It's like, oh, actually, this isn't quite right. And I think it's the same in the workplace, isn't it? You don't want somebody that is focused on the customer because they're going to get 2 pints at the end of it.
Yes.
You don't want somebody that's like not having an accident today because they're going to get 2 pints from it. But still, you want to give them 2 pints because of all them things. So it's a much more complex landscape where human decency plays a bigger part in that process.
Yeah.
Maybe just add to that as well. I think because I agree with what Max said. I think you've got 2 types of leaders, basically. One will not want ROI or need it, and just like say, to hell with it. Like, we don't care, just spend some money on this because it feels like the right thing to do. And we won't track it. And I think that's amazing. But if you're not in that space, and I'm conscious we've had a question, I think, in Q&A around this, that if it's at all helpful, because I appreciate that answer isn't going to help you in your situation. If you have got a CFO who needs this, and if they ask for it, then fine. You've got to find a way of tying this to monetary figures, company figures. How effectively are we going to make money from doing this or save money from doing this? And you've just got to find something to attach a dollar sign to it, and that will probably be somewhere in your people data if you look hard enough. And if it's not there yet, it might be that you need to go and do some additional things to unearth that. So it could be working harder in exit interviews to understand why people are leaving. It's not going to be just down to the fact that I wasn't surprised or recognized in this moment or that moment, but you might see some themes surface. And if you're losing great performers and you can tie that to the amount of money that you're having to spend on backfilling their roles, or whatever that might be, there's something there to anchor it to. There's also something around understanding more about team level engagement and team health. A lot of companies will ask this question about being recognized in their standard engagement surveys that we all still do. So you've probably got something there to ground it. But if you at a deeper level can tie those themes to team performance and pull something there, but again, still dig deeper and tie that to something monetary from a revenue, profit, loss perspective, that will start talking someone's language. So I find a lot of teams do some of that, but they don't quite go far enough to actually present the CFO with like, this is costing us X amount of dollars per year by doing a really bad job on this. And final thought on that is I think there's like a little bit of a myth around gifting and recognition, that it has to also be about money and cost, and it really doesn't have to cost the world. There's a lot of gestures that people can do day to day that mean the world to people. A managing director or CEO in a larger company, like tapping you on the shoulder or messaging you on Slack saying happy birthday, like when they probably shouldn't necessarily know that it's your birthday because the organization's that large. Those are the sort of moments that actually mean a lot more to people sometimes as well. So it doesn't have to cost the world.
No, it doesn't, and it doesn't always have to have a gift or something of value attached to it. It can just be a public shout out or something like that, doesn't it? Look, Louise, I know that you mentioned on the topic of like building the business case for the CFO. I know that you mentioned obviously trying to get more access, better access to data at the moment, but when you were implementing your gifting, your recognition scheme, how did you build, or did you even need to build the business case? Like, how did you go about that?
So again, Stowe is really a people business. So we call it our welfare budget, which kind of encompasses quite a lot of different things. And we decided to kind of just slice that up. It was always just kind of there to be utilised as and when. And I think Hugg's helped us put a bit more consistency around that, how that's used across the firm, especially as we've grown. You know, it's been interesting listening to the conversations of when you're a small firm and there's less than 100 of you, and we've gone from, I mean, I wasn't here, but we've gone from that size to where we are now with people across the UK and managers now having small teams. And I think, you know, we've got that budget, but I think as we grow, everything's being scrutinized just that little bit more. I think we're going to need to start being able to, if we want a bigger budget, you know, we can say, oh, it's working, people like it, but that's probably not going to be enough to say, you know, can we increase this budget? We're going to have to tie it to some data. And I think it's certainly something across our team that we want to do more of. I'd be really interested if there's anybody on the call that's using data really well in people and HR teams. I know, you know, it's something that's certainly on our radar. We've got a lot of great data across the various platforms that we use, but it's kind of pulling that together and comparing it to have that great business case, because we certainly know things like empty chair costs, and you know, we do all the exit interviews, but we're not perhaps linking all of that together and being able to say, look, the managers that are utilizing their Huggg budget really well as all the other, you know, there's bigger elements, but I think we can say that will save us some money because people will stay. So yeah,
definitely. Before we pass over, because I know that we've nearing time, do you have, Mac or Adam, any experience kind of linking data up in that respect to how Louise was just kind of explaining it?
Again, all I would say is you get very different types of leaders. I think your role as a people leader is to know what makes your CFO or founder tick. Some people just won't have to make any effort at all, and lucky them, incredible. Like a founder couldn't care less. They just do it because it's right, and that's great. But your CFO or your founder might care deeply about other things, and it's up to you to speak their language and adapt your business case to them and present that to them. And even if you don't think that's the right thing to do, and if that goes against your beliefs on this particular topic, you need to do that in order to get something over the line, then it's worth it. So I think I think that all I would do is, all I say is, like, know your stakeholders inside out, know what makes them tick, know what influences them, and lean into that and do a really good job of that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. But my career has had a number of kind of components to it. I spent something like 25 years in corporate organizations in HR roles, and in the last 3 years I've been running my own HR consultancy, helping clients with this kind of topic. And I didn't realize this for the first 25 years, but when you're in-house, your ability to see the wood for the trees, because there is endless demands on your time, energy, and your, you know, mental capacity, but also the believability that you have from your leaders can be influenced by you being in-house. You know probably your organization very well, and you can feel the rhythm of the organization and say, we really need to do something about this, and therefore, you know, I want to get on with that. This is where we should go. But you have the CFO, the CEO, the managing directors are like, well, I'm not sure. Can you help me with that? And in my consulting space, I've come to realize the power of an external support in two directions. One, they're not feeling the rhythm in the same way that you are, and they're able to cut through into, you know, we've looked at all of your data sources, and it appears that when you triangulate this, and this, these are the interventions that could make the biggest difference, kind of removing the, removing the emotional connection from that and talking much more in the language of the CFO. I think the other thing, and it is a sad truth, that, you know, if your employee tells you something is true, then you can have suspicion and doubt about that, and you can have opinions about it. But if you're getting an expert in from outside to tell you that something's true, then it must surely be believable. And this is definitely true with leadership teams around, hey, we've looked at this, we've compared that against what your competitors are doing. We can tell you that in 15 other places, this thing that you're doing is irregular. And if you don't do it, you're going to suffer these consequences, or you're missing this opportunity. And, you know, this is something that I think is something that lots of people are nervous about doing, because I should be the best, I should know all the answers. But sometimes switching that up on can kind of give a different, it can give a different perspective, and it can also have a different influence lever within the organization. So I am obviously biased, but I advocate that there is value in that sense. The other thing that, just in terms of the way the world is changing around insights for people, is that we are moving massively away from in-depth studies and, you know, annual engagement surveys, and let's ask people 60 questions to interpret what do we know about them. Much more moving into data lakes. What information do we already have, which actually go far beyond HR, that can influence our knowledge on why are things happening in the business. And I think, like, taking a moment out from what have I done in order to prove this concept into, do you know what? I'm able to identify these patterns using AI, using third parties, and there are three obvious things, and we can deal with one of them right now if we go and do that. I think this is kind of the new era that we're in.
Nice. What sort of what AI tools would you use to help you do that, or?
Yeah. And well, you know, I know that Claude is the obvious answer to all of that, but actually, I believe there are special tools for your special needs depending on what you're trying to do. Yeah. And I think that, you know, it's really good that we're all out there actively having a go, and I think that's good. But when it comes to how am I going to convert performance in my team, how am I going to be a winning organization, I don't think this should be something that you do on the train. I think this should, you know, it shouldn't be something that you're trying to work out by watching a YouTube video. I think it requires more specialist capability. And depending on your sector, your organization, and your challenge, there are many tools available for you. Be happy to, you know, anybody send me a LinkedIn message, and I'd be happy to try and help them with that.
Yeah, definitely. What we'll do is, as well, we'll send a follow-up email, obviously, with the recording, the report, but I think it'll be worthwhile just dropping your LinkedIn profiles in case anyone has any follow-up questions they want to ask. Final, I know we've only got a couple of minutes left. Final question that's just come in. Tips on getting managers equally engaged with recognition. I've got a little experience on this from seeing people implement Huggg, and what we find that the businesses that get the most engagement out of managers across the board are obviously making it easy for them to do it, but just showing them, like, it's all about comms, isn't it? Kind of just showing how quick and easy something is to do, but also giving them permission and giving them ideas, because like you say, Adam, some managers are better than others at thinking about the best times to do things. So it's almost about seeding those ideas and giving them permission to send a cup of coffee if someone's having a bad day, or send a birthday present, or recognize someone that's going above and beyond. I don't know if any of you agree with that.
That's how, oh sorry Adam, I was going to say that's how I kind of did it at Stowe. So I think we brought Huggg into the business, and so hopefully managers were familiar with our culture of giving recognition and that kind of thing already, but then we really set out kind of some quite clear guide. I mean, the platform's quite easy to use, which makes it easy, and the breadth is out there, but we kind of set some parameters for them. You know, this isn't, we made it really clear what it wasn't for, what they could use it for. You know, obviously we wanted it to feel personal, they know their teams best, but we also gave some kind of guidance on, you know, values, the kinds of gifts they might want to send, when they might want to send them, and that kind of thing. So, and I think that has helped in terms of the kind of, you know, the amount of people that have taken it up and used it for us.
Yeah, I just maybe sort of, we touched on this, but something else to add. You need best of both here. You've got to make sure you've got a very clear idea of like, what is a manager here in this business? It's different in every company, and most companies we speak to haven't got that documented and living and breathing. They don't really know. So they're hiring and promoting the wrong managers in the first place. So if you get that wrong, it's very, very hard to do anything with technology to help fix that. There's a behavioral problem. You do need some guidance or some system or something in place to help them understand what we can do if we would like to do. So if you get those two things right, you've got a really good chance. What I would say though, just as a final note, is there's real nuance to like teams and managers and what motivates people and how people like to be recognized. So on the face of it, you might sit there and think, well, this line manager's doing lots of this stuff here, but this one's not. I would encourage you to go and speak to those managers and understand what they're doing and why, and what they're not doing and why, because some teams might need a little bit more recognition and validation and help. Maybe if you've got a junior team who just need a little bit more like, well done, pat on the back. You might also have a really senior team who are like, I don't want a gift or whatever, like just give me a well done or whatever. There might be a lot of verbal like stuff happening in that team that doesn't show up on paper. So equally, don't look too much at the sort of the data. And I think teams do that too much. They sit there looking too much at data. They don't spend enough time doing listening tours and getting deeper with managers and teams on what's actually being done and not being done. So really big like final suggestion there, I suppose.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, recognition is one component in a sea of components. And if your headline KPI is how many kudos points did you know, like if it's any of that stuff, you've lost your mind. To be perfectly honest, like there's more to life than all of that. Really what we want is people that are thrilled to be at work. They feel that they're able to bring great innovation, delight customers, and be winning, and they stay there, or they have a great career and they go somewhere else, and we're able to attract other great people to come and join the organization. Like this is the measurement of the work we're not doing. It's not, you know, let me get an Excel sheet and see how many love heart emojis did each manager post on something. It's pointless.
Yeah. Definitely. I couldn't have wrapped that up any better myself, Mike. That's very a good way to look at it. Nice. We've run slightly over, so I don't want to keep everyone longer than promised, but what we'll do is we'll follow up with that benchmarking report, the recording, everyone's LinkedIn profiles. I was going to put a QR code on screen to download the report, but I won't risk my Mac crashing again. So we'll follow up in an email. But thank you, everyone. Thank you three for that. That was really, really useful, really enjoyable.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.